Hello Assassins, this is Gargudon for the ones who came before, and today we are going to be digging deeper into the meaning behind Edward Kenway's tattoos. Before we kick this off, it should be pointed out that everything I'm going to be saying in this video is primarily pure speculation. Some of the stuff is going to be based on a trailer released by Ubisoft back in 2013 promoting Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag, while other is just speculation and theories. It should be pointed out that the reason for Edward even having tattoos was as he was a sailor. What the tattoos were used for was if anybody died during a ship battle, for example, you'd be able to identify the deceased by the tattoos. I do however believe that the ones found on Edward's body has a deeper, more personal meaning to them. So let's get started with this. I want to start off with the 3 tattoos that can be found on his chest. The first one is the octopus. According to research on symbolic meanings of an octopus, amongst other things, will, reason, potential, diversity, and flexibility are attached to the octopus. Now I mentioned these specific 5 as I think they relate to Edward the best. Will and reason relates to Edward as he's a young man, doing what he has to do to satisfy himself and or others, both before and after his life as proper assassin. He's always driven by something, if it's earning a fortune to become rich, or taking down the West Indian Templars to secure the safety of others. Now, it's obvious throughout Black Flag's main story that Edward has potential to become a skilled and wise assassin. It isn't before the end of the game he fully unlocks this potential, but throughout sequences 1 to 10, Edward is gaining experience, all making him a wiser and more mature man, resulting in him reaching his full potential as assassin and human. Diversity plays a role in Edward's life in different ways. As a pirate, he believed all were equal regardless of gender, ethnicity, and skin color. This diversity is represented through both quartermasters of his ship, the Jackdaw. Adewale was a dark-colored man, and Aunt Bonnie was an Irish woman, both of which were heavily looked down on by some at the time. And finally, flexibility is pretty self-explanatory. Edward was a remarkable freerunner. All in all, the octopus tattoo represents different parts of Edward's personality, as well as his journey throughout the West Indies. Now onto the second tattoo, which is the wheel with a skull in the center of it. Now to be honest, I think this is for the most part just another ordinary pirate tattoo. The ship wheel represents a pirate's life out on the sea, and the skull is a symbol of death and mortality. The symbolic meaning of the skull can be connected to Edward's life as it is shown in the game, especially sequence 11, Memory 2, Delirium. How Edward feels dead inside to a degree. He has also lost people he cared about in his life, such as Caroline Scott, Mary Read, and Edward Blackbeard Thatch, to name a few. The third and final tattoo that can be found on Edward's chest is the sailing ship with a sword as anchor stabbing a heart which is being attacked by some sort of sea snakes. The ship presumably represents Edward's life as a privateer, and the snakes attacking it represents the dangers that follow with a life-threatening lifestyle. And finally, the sword anchor stabbing the heart below could be a symbol representing how Edward chose to leave his wife Caroline Scott behind. In other words, let his love life die in order to set out on the seas in hopes of a better life. With this in mind, the snakes could also be a symbol of his past love life catching up on him as he innerly feels bad for leaving his wife behind. Now it's on to the tattoos that can be found on his back. Now really this looks like one big tattoo that's made up of several different animals and weapons. Now on top of his back it appears there is another octopus, and let's just assume it has the same meaning as the one on the chest. At the bottom we once again have 2 skulls, which presumably like the other skulls on Edward's body represents death, mortality, and Edward feeling dead inside. Several meanings can be attached to the sword in the center, but I'm just going to go with the meaning attached to a sword in Christianity, as it is one of the most interesting ones. In Christianity, a sword is a symbol of protection, righteousness, and justice. All these 3 strongly connect to Edward as he wants justice by hunting the Templars in the West Indies, as well as being righteous in several ways. He follows the creed of the assassins while dealing with saying no to personal, selfish satisfaction. Now let's move on to the 2 lions that can be found on each side of the sword. Symbolically, strength is associated with a lion. Now based on what you viewers know about Edward and the stuff I've mentioned in the video, connecting strength to Edward is pretty straightforward. Now if we try to connect all the tattoos on the back, Edward is represented by the octopus and the lion who is protecting the world with his unique powerful weapon. In this case, it could be his hidden blade, trying to prevent death which is going to build itself up in case the assassins fail to keep the peace. Now on to the right arm. On his upper right arm we find a crown. A crown typically represents power and glory. Now if we look at some famous crowns, let's say the Royal English crown, it is decorated by jewels that are worth millions. With that in mind, I think this tattoo represents Edward's greed and desire for fortune we see early on in Black Flag's story. If we move down, we can see a dagger with a skull on top of it stabbing a snake. Let's say the snake is of the same sort that attacks Edward's ship on the chest tattoo, and with that in mind, I simply think this tattoo is a symbol of defeating evil. Now let's move on to the fourth and final body part where Edward has tattoos, which can be found on his left arm. At the very top of his arm, we can find a picture of a woman. My assumption is the picture, even though the resemblance isn't perfect, could be of Caroline. That way, Edward will never forget what his wife looks like when he's halfway across the world, and she will always be with him. Below that, we find a pair of flintlock pistols lying on top of each other. I don't think there's much meaning to this other than it's another ordinary pirate tattoo representing the life of a privateer. The final tattoo on Edward's body, found on his lower left arm, appears to be some kind of symbols I'm far from sure as to what mean. Therefore, this final analysis is going to be based off comments on a fairly recent Reddit post in the Assassin's Creed subreddit by sephborn, which there will be a link to below. In short, this tattoo probably represents navigation of some kind. There appears to be what is a Mandela wheel, which would represent spending time sailing in the Indian Ocean, although how this relates to Edward isn't exactly straightforward, as from what we know, he did not spend any time in that ocean prior to the events of Black Flag. It could be another nautical symbol though, symbolizing sailing, but somehow in the West Indies instead. It could also be that the symbol symbolizes sun and the stars, which makes connecting it to sailing pretty obvious, as the sailors used the stars to navigate for hundreds and hundreds of years. Overall, this tattoo is probably just made up of various nautical symbols, symbolizing sailing, the sea, and Edward's life as a sailor out on the sea. So, that is our full analysis of the meaning behind Edward Kenway's tattoos. What do you think of this analysis? Do you perhaps think they mean something else, or do you think they don't mean anything at all really? Whatever you think, be sure to let us know in the comment section down below. And with that, thank you all for watching this analytical breakdown. We hope you enjoyed it. To stay up to date on everything happening on this channel and more things AC, be sure to subscribe and follow us on socials, all of which links can be found to down below. I have been Gargudon for the ones who came before. Stay safe and active, assassins. Peace.